She was the gorgeous, glamorous star who lit up America's favorite courtroom sitcom. But behind the laugh tracks, Markie Post lived a life full of secret struggles, surprising controversies, and unlikely Hollywood connections. She went from working behind the scenes on game shows to stealing scenes in front of millions. But what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling, and how did this beloved TV icon face her final, heartbreaking battle in secret? I'll cover Markie from start to finish, and to keep this interesting, I'll list 5 surprising facts about her life that, once revealed, mean you'll never think of her the same way again. And by the way, stick around until the end because I can't help but save one last, stunning revelation for the finale. Markie Post, fame, luck, and heartbreak. Markie Post wasn't destined to be Hollywood royalty. She was born plain old Marjorie Armstrong Post on November 4th, 1950 in Palo Alto, California. Her father, Richard Post, was a physicist, famous for his work on nuclear fusion. Her mother, Mary Lee Armstrong Post, was a poet. It was an oddball pairing that gave Markie both brains and creativity. Markie was the second of 3 children, with 2 brothers, Rodney and Stephen. Surprising fact number 1, although her real name was Marjorie, her older brother had trouble pronouncing that when she was born. This led to the nickname Markie, which stuck around her whole life. Markie had a relatively normal life growing up in Walnut Creek, not far from San Francisco. She went to high school at Las Lomas High School, where her friendly, approachable disposition, paired with her stunning good looks, made her a cheerleader and quite popular. I had a horse when I grew up in my backyard, she says. I had a bicycle. We were out all day long. No worries, no cell phones. Nobody's going to kidnap us. Nobody's going to hit us with a car. They might have, but we weren't worried about it then. In some ways, Markie grew up in the shadow of her parents. I couldn't be as charming as my mother or as smart as my father, so I decided to be bad. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't drink, couldn't smoke, and didn't have sex. I flunked at being a rebel. And so it was acting in Hollywood that she gravitated towards. She went to Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, where she would eventually earn a Bachelor of Arts degree. But it wasn't a bed of roses. In 1969, when she was 19, the jocks on campus voted her the biggest snob. I cried for days, she says. I had never been actively disliked before. It was there in college that she met fellow drama student Stephen Knox. She fell hard for him and his bad boy image. I fell for him because I had never met a man with real angst. He was charismatic and cynical. I married him out of passion. I had never had a sexual experience before. I was Snow White and he was James Dean. As intense as it was, the relationship burned out quickly. They split up and divorced after just 9 months. Markie transferred to Pomona College in Claremont, California in a desperate attempt to get over her broken heart and start over. Once things settled down, she transferred back to Lewis and Clark, graduating in 1975. Although she wasn't able to land an acting job, she eased into Hollywood behind the scenes on game shows, initially writing game show questions on the crew of Split Second. Before long, she was helping with various aspects of production on The Price is Right, including selecting prizes. At one point, she became associate producer for Double Dare with Alex Trebek. One of her first forays in front of the camera was as a card dealer for the game show Card Sharks. She began auditioning and started getting roles. Markie has always considered herself lucky, but she had a lot going for her. First of all, of course, her looks. She had a degree and quite a bit of experience behind the camera, as well as contacts in the television industry. She says, I remember getting cast in my first series, and the casting director told me that part of the reason they cast me was because I had my hands in my pockets and I looked like I was totally on top of it, and they want that. They want somebody who just knows what they're doing. I was scared to death. My hands were shaking, so that's why I had them in my pocket. Surprising fact number 2, despite her gorgeous girl-next-door looks and her phenomenal body, Markie went through a period where she had an eating disorder. The pressure to look her best on camera mounted, and she found herself losing more and more weight, at one point dropping from her normal 110 pounds to just 98 pounds. I turned down dates because I dreaded sitting in front of a plate full of food. I said, enough is enough. Slowly, I began to regain my appetite. She began landing small roles in many of the popular shows of the times. She debuted on Chips in 1979. She followed that up with appearances in Barnaby Jones, The Incredible Hulk. She spent a couple of episodes of Buck Rogers in skin-tight red outfits that garnered a lot of attention and more than a little controversy. She continued to pop up all over the place in 1980 and 1981. She was always glamorous, but her appearances on the Love Boat, much like on Buck Rogers a few years before, really turned heads. In 1980, she was in an acting class when she met a young man named Michael Ross. Their relationship started out a little rocky. Michael says, "I thought Markie was a huge phony. She had just completed a reading and was sensational. People were giving her compliments and she was saying, 'Oh, really? Oh, do you really mean that?' I thought she was playing Little Miss Shirley Temple." In recounting their origin story, Markie laughed and said she wasn't overly impressed with Michael either at the start. "I only asked him to do the scene with me because another guy was hitting on me and I wanted to get rid of him." But the two married 1 year later and remained that way for the following decades. Her career really launched in 1982 when she landed a recurring role opposite superstar Lee Majors on The Fall Guy. She would churn through 64 episodes over a period of 3 years from 1982 to 1985. Markie loved working, and she would pick up additional opportunities throughout that period on shows like Cheers, Fantasy Island, and The A-Team. For many years, she stayed in touch with her game show roots, appearing on the $25,000 Pyramid from 1983 through 1988. In some ways, that part of the story reminds me of Linda Carter. If you haven't seen my biography video of the OG Wonder Woman, make sure you check it out. As The Fall Guy wrapped up, she landed what would turn out to be the defining role of her career as Christine Sullivan, a lawyer on the sitcom Night Court. Leading us to strange fact number 3, as down-to-earth, positive, and polite as Markie was, she was surprisingly negative about her time on The Fall Guy. It may have brought her the attention she needed to become a star, but she suffered through a multi-year unpleasant experience. "It was not a happy set," she says. "I felt like an outsider, a prop. I didn't even know about Heather Thomas's drug problem until a few months before it came out. I felt like I was a nothing, a zero." Heather Thomas was known for going to rehab for a cocaine addiction at the time. I think she also went through a divorce and got hit by a car. Crazy stories best saved for an entirely separate biography, so stay tuned. Leading us into surprising fact number 4, when she jumped from the ABC network's The Fall Guy to NBC's Night Court, she was awarded a $2 million contract, $400,000 per year. Quite comfortable for a working actor at the time. Now, remember, this was in 1984. Running it through an inflation calculator, $400,000 then is like $1.3 million per year now. Don't forget, she was on the show for 8 years, meaning her original contract was extended. It was rumored that her pay was doubled. Markie was in Night Court from 1984 to when it ended in 1992, a total of 159 episodes. She and Michael had their first daughter, Katie, in 1987, and the second, Daisy, in 1990, both solidly within her tenure on Night Court. They built a house in Toluca Lake and managed to focus on being a family despite Markie's continued acting career and Michael's work as a producer. I don't want to leave out weird fact number 5, though. Remember that quote from Markie about her childhood and having a horse in her backyard? Well, she took a trip down Nostalgia Lane in 1986 in The Wildest West Show of Stars. She trained quite a bit before she took center stage to show off her writing and roping skills. A funny, gorgeous lawyer on Night Court at the time, viewers might catch her one weekend glamming it up on a game show and the next playing cowgirl with a serious set of skills. Markie continued to stay busy in Hollywood with a notable excursion into the sitcom Hearts Afire from 1992 through 1995. She starred with the epic John Ritter, who she always raved about, in a total of 54 episodes. She was in a number of made-for-TV movies, but landed on the big screen itself in 1998 in the now famous There's Something About Mary with Ben Stiller and Cameron Diaz. If you haven't seen that movie, put it on your list immediately and prepare to laugh until you cry. I'll also point out a 3-year run in Chicago PD, where a new generation of fans came to know her as Bunny Fletcher over the course of 18 episodes from 2014 to 2017. Markie was diagnosed with cancer in 2017. She continued to work, facing her illness with a mix of grace, bravery, humility, and toughness. Her final film was called Christmas Reservations in 2019. She passed away in 2021 at the age of 70. Now, I've covered a fairly thorough biography of Markie from 1950 to 2021, and as promised, I delivered 5 facts that many didn't know about her, but I've been debating about covering one final thing. It was rumored for years that Markie had a fling with Bill Clinton. Yes, that Bill Clinton, the former president. This is not particularly well known, and it's certainly not substantiated. AI is all the rage these days, and if you do a search about Markie Post and Bill Clinton, you're told there is no public record or information available to indicate that actress Markie Post ever met President Bill Clinton. But that is certainly not the case. It was fairly well known that Markie was a Democrat, and in 1993 she co-hosted a presidential inauguration for children. Not only did Kermit the Frog make an appearance, Markie was seen singing with him on stage, alongside none other than Bill and Hillary Clinton. A tabloid widely circulated a very weird photo at the time of Markie Post and TV producer Linda Bloodworth Thomason jumping up and down on a bed in the White House during what was called an overnight stay. Markie always refused to address these rumors, and her publicist always denied them. But Clinton had a bit of a reputation. Monica Lewinsky and Jennifer Flowers comes immediately to mind. And as we discussed in the Tanya Knight biography, once you've been labeled a cheater, that label tends to be hard to shed. Clinton was repeatedly criticized at the time for being too close to Hollywood, and maybe Markie was a very real part of that. Who knows what the truth is, but it's safe to say she was close friends with the president, and there was some controversy about it at the time. Markie Post's story isn't just about sitcom fame. It's about her amazing transition from game show production to sitcom star. She proved that resilience and charm could keep you relevant in a cutthroat industry. And maybe that's why we still remember her, not just for Christine Sullivan, but for the way that she carried herself with humor, grace, and quiet defiance. So next time you catch a rerun of Night Court or The Fall Guy, remember, there's always more to the story than what you see on the screen. Hey you, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below. I really enjoy hearing from you.